Alrighty, everyone. Sorry, we had some technical difficulties. This is take two. As as the, I don't know who says that. As the movie producers say, this is take two of this Patriots versus Dolphins recap. I'm joined here by my good friend Ricky. This is his first appearance on End Up with David in over a year, and he's helping me with this Patriots recap. Chris could not join us, so I reached out to Ricky last minute to see if he'd help me cover this so we could get this out tonight. He was ever so gracious to help join me with this. So, Ricky, how are you doing today after the result of the game earlier today? I'm assuming there's some mixed feelings because you are a notorious Patriots and Dolphins fan. So, how are you feeling after the game today?
I think mixed emotions is really the best way to put it. A lot of people in Boston sports media have been saying and I really honestly agree with the sentiment that it seems like the Patriots haven't put a lot of care into their coaching and into their how they're going to approach this year. So I feel like as a fan, I should not care. Now I do care, obviously, but I feel like this game was a really good example of that, where some of the coaching decisions were really awful. The offensive scheming looked way different than the McDaniel scheme last year, and it definitely exposed Mac Jones in a lot of spots. And yeah, the defense also looked like it took a huge step back. Obviously, Matt Judon had some, Judon like stuff, and there were a few nice moments and plays, but yeah. And then on the positive end, I am somebody who definitely is a very big fan of the Dolphins, what they've been doing the last few years. I'm obviously kind of really upset about the Flores situation, but I'm a big fan of Tua. I think a lot of people have really been devaluing his value as a quarterback, and I feel like the Tua from Alabama that everybody's been hoping for, I think it's going to come this year. I think this game was a perfect example of that. I think Tua looked incredible. I know he only had one throwing touchdown, but throwing, I believe, over 300, or if not, right around 300 yards is incredible. And he utilized his two best receivers, being Hill and Waddle, just as people expected they would. So, Dolphins wise, it was a huge, promising look. And it's really difficult that these two teams play in the same division. But yeah, I think, and even on the Patriots end, I definitely think there were some positives which we can get into, but obviously a lot of negatives too. We can talk about Mac Jones and the press availability and things like that. But yeah, I think mixed emotions is really the perfect way to summarize today's game. So yeah, we can get right into the good, the bad, and the ugly on the Pats side of things. So
Yeah, and I'll certainly tip my cap to the Dolphins. They came to play today. My fears of what I talked about last night in my preview with Chris came true, where if you let Tua stick in the pocket, he's going to be able to do his thing. A lot of people give Tua a lot of hate for whatever reason because he doesn't have a deep ball, but that's just not his game, at least yet. Maybe we'll see that develop later in the year, obviously, with having Waddle and Tyreek Hill as deep threats, along with Cedric Wilson Jr. But I was really impressed with the game he played today. I don't watch Dolphins games outside of the ones when we play them, but I think you probably do. So would you say that this was too as like one of the best games of his career?
I definitely think so. I think this was really he really fired on all cylinders, and I think this is really ideally what people have expected from Tua since he came into the league and was drafted at such a coveted spot. The whole tank for Tua movement and everything. I think this was definitely, if not the best performance, one of. And I think definitely the way he was. And as you mentioned, it is a really good point about him not having that deep threat, not being a deep threat necessarily. And a lot of people have even said that about Mac as well, which I think is interesting given their alma mater and connections and things like that. But yeah, I think this game, he had those deep passes, then they were executed well. He had those, running plays when needed. He was able to be, solid in the pocket, as you mentioned. I think Tua just looked really comfortable. And I think that was really reassuring, I'm sure, to a lot of people rooting for Tua. So I would say this definitely could be potentially his best game so far. I'm trying to think back to last year. I know towards the end there were a few really solid performances, even against the Patriots last year in that late season matchup. But yeah, this was a very high point for his career so far. So
Definitely. And just again, tipping the cap to Miami's offense as a whole. The debut of Tyreek Hill was as good as advertised for Miami. He had 77 yards in the first half of the game, ended with 94 yards. Jalen Waddle had right around 70 yards. Tua looked comfortable. Wide receivers made plays for him, and their offense just clicked against us. On the other side of the ball, I'm not going to give their defense as much credit against our offense. I just think our offense beat ourselves more times than the defense beat us. Obviously, there was that play early in the game, which will funnel into my first point, where the first drive was going so great for the Patriots in this game. Obviously, all questions from the spring and the summer were, how is this offense going to look? It's a new offense. We do the zone runs now instead of the power runs, otherwise known as just run it down your throat. That's what the Patriots have done for years. But this offseason, we switched to our mentality to do like what the Rams and the 49ers do and just do outside runs, which isn't Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson's strong suits, but we're trying to fit them into this new scheme. So a lot of questions with the offense, but it was pretty good to start the game. First pass of the game, Jacoby Myers hauled in for a 10-yard gain. Hunter Henry had a catch later in that drive. Damian Harris had some nice runs. And late in the drive, we finally decided to take a shot deep to the new New England Patriot, ex-Miami Dolphin, Devontae Parker. But the throw was tipped by Xavier Howard, who had the task of covering his old teammate Devontae Parker today, and it was intercepted by Holland off the tip. And this is kind of where everything started to fall apart from there. And you think that was honestly a pretty big heartbreaking moment in this game, because it would have been so important if we could have just gotten points on that first drive. Not only just to prove it to ourselves, but also just to prove it to all the people in Boston sports media saying, oh, the offense is the offense. Like Matt Patricia can't run an offense, which remains to be seen based on today's game. But what can you expect from a guy like Matt Patricia, who's just been defense heavy his whole career, and he's now just being asked, after 20 years in the league, to finally run an offense? So there's going to be some cobwebs to work through, but on that play, it was just really heartbreaking in my opinion, because you just want to at least end with a field goal or a touchdown. You expect to end with points on a drive like that, but I don't hate the play call. Like, I knew the deep shot was coming at some point, but it's just always dicey when you throw it to someone like Xavier Howard, who's an excellent corner and a Patriots killer. But the more frustrating part of this play for me was that there was a missed pass interference call on this play, as Xavier Howard literally had his arm like this on Devontae Parker's arm and was jabbing at it, but they got away with it. And you messed up as a ref, honestly, when Mac Jones is complaining to you, because they show the replays of Mac Jones throwing up his arms. There should have been a flag, and that kind of ruined our momentum and stopped the Patriots from getting points. And I'm fully confident we would have gotten points on that drive. So honestly, I chalk up that first drive and that last play as I get the play call and I like it. It's just, is it always risky throwing it to Xavier Howard? Absolutely. But we should have gotten the flag there.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I definitely too, with the momentum in particular. Yeah, it was really cool seeing the different weapons be utilized, kind of like how Tua was using his guys. Mac definitely was using the arsenal there. There was passes to, I believe he passed to Aguilar on that first drive. There was the handoff to Harris a couple times. Ramondre Stevenson, I believe, was in on that. And then obviously that end pass to Parker, which definitely I agree. I think there should have been a flag there. And I think had there been a flag, or had, Howard's arm not been in that proximity, I think Parker would have hauled that in. Because he's definitely a very good deep threat type of guy, was with the Dolphins the last few seasons. So I don't doubt, like you said too, I think, and even if that didn't, Parker were to drop that, or it was potentially, fumbled or whatever, had that happened, that would have happened, and there would have been nothing. But I think, like you said too, there would have at least been three points on that drive. But I think a touchdown ideally would have likely been the result, whether it was on that Parker pass, because Mac definitely looked comfortable throwing that, and Parker was in position, and it wasn't an overshoot. It was definitely. But I definitely agree. I think there could have been some points out of that. And had there been, that definitely would have changed the game for sure, especially right out the gate. Because I know the Patriots struggled a lot last year with those early game drives, really taking the charge. And I think that also would have, in particular with the naysayers too, like you pointed out, I think that would have also silenced a lot of people if the Patriots could come out on that first drive and do what they struggled with last year. So for sure, I think that there could have been a hugely different result there, and the game might have looked a lot different than it did.
Definitely. That absolutely changes the game. And it's just unfortunate because that just goes back to really all the losses that happened last year with Mac Jones and all the losses late in the season with Mac Jones and now this loss to begin the year always stem from, playing from behind and not being able to recover. And it just changed the game. That's unfortunate.
Right.
But Dolphins, before the end of the first quarter, got a field goal, made it 3-0. And it stayed like that for a while until in the second quarter when Jones on the Dolphins, Brandon Jones got a sack on a blitz of Mac Jones, and Melvin Ingram picked up the loose ball and just waltzed into the end zone. So that made it 10-0 at that point. That was the scoop and score play where Mac Jones was blindside sacked, fell to the ground. Melvin Ingram just picks it up and 10-0 at that point. And the sad thing is, us as viewers saw that play happening from a mile away. We all know the Dolphins like to blitz. They're one of the biggest blitz-heavy teams in the league. But I was just screaming at the TV like, Mac, look behind you, look behind you. Obviously, you can't hear me, but that was just really unfortunate. And that was one of those back-breaking plays that you're going to look back on from this game and just wish that it didn't happen. I don't know really if there's too much to prevent it because with a blitz, there's only so much you can do when there's more guys that are blitzing than people you have on the O-line. That was on Trent Brown's side. Trent Brown had someone covered, and it was too late before I realized what was going to happen. People are saying maybe Hunter Henry should have given him like a little shove as he was running his route to throw the guy off on the blitz, but it's just a smart, savvy play call by Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins to blitz in that situation, and it paid off and getting them 7 points. So after that play, it's 10-0, and the Patriots weren't able to do anything right after that. And just another quick little highlight play here. It's unfortunate because after the Dolphins got the ball back, after the Patriots punted again, Jack Jones got mossed by Tyreek Hill of all people. That was just a quick little highlight that I wanted to mention. Tyreek Hill, as I said, had an amazing game, unfortunately, for the Dolphins in his debut, as expected. Mike McDaniel talked about all offseason once they traded for Tyreek that he's going to have a huge part of this offense. He's one of the best wide receivers in the league. Just a pain going up against him in those Kansas City games. It's going to be a pain now facing him twice a year. Jonathan Jones can only do so much facing him. We, before this matchup, had done better in covering Tyreek Hill than we did in like the first few games of his career against us. But he just torched us again, and it means nothing because we lost, whether we cut him good or not. An L is an L. But you got the best of us on that play, and he made Jack Jones look really bad. Then we're going to get to right before the half. It was 4th and 7, and the Dolphins were right around midfield. And you'd think that the Dolphins, really, traditional NFL play suggests that in that situation, 24 seconds left, midfield, you just punt the ball, but you want it to be a short punt, so you pin them way deep in their end zone, and then you just take it to half. Mm-hmm. That's not how they do it in Miami, or at least that's not how they did it here in Miami in this first game. Mike McDaniel made the gutsy play call at midfield on 4th and 7, with 24 seconds left in the half to go for it. And Tua found Jalen Waddle over the middle as he split through 3 defenders. I believe Phillips and Duggar both tripped and fell on each other, and before you know it, Waddle was off to the end zone. So that was another back-breaking play. These 2 back-breaking plays in this game happened in that second quarter, and the Dolphins went into the half up 17-0. And that's as cocky as it gets. Like, Miami won this game. They have all the bragging rights for sure in winning this game. But to go for it on 4th and 7 at midfield with 24 seconds left, knowing that if you don't convert it, all the Patriots have to do is get 1 or 2 good plays, get in the field goal range, and get a field goal before the half. That's as cocky as it gets. But McDaniel, in his first ever NFL game as a head coach, trusted his guy Tua, and it worked out. And that's really was the game right there after they scored. Once they went up 17-0, I mean, they only added on a field goal in the second half. So that was kind of like the winning score in a sense. And what a way it came.
For sure, yeah. That was really at the half, that was really definitely the point where I started to get the sense that the Dolphins were kind of going to run with things for the game. I think that second quarter in particular really set the tone. Getting those 2 touchdowns, those 14 points, really, really shut down the Patriots. And I think, as we mentioned at the beginning too, I think the second quarter featured a lot of offensive and defensive mistakes on the Patriots, and that was just a sloppy quarter on both sides of the ball. And yeah, that just led to a lot of opportunities, and the Dolphins utilized those perfectly and did what they needed to do. But yeah, it was almost like a flex to be up that point at that point. I mean, it was definitely an impressive first half. Even though the first quarter was pretty, I'd say more even than the second was. So,
And it's just unfortunate because I feel like neither team was playing amazing up until this point because it was still 3-0 Miami, as I said, for
right,
most of that first half. But it's just two backbreaking plays by Miami that just really won them this game in the first half because the turnovers killed us in the first half with the interception that would have led to points. And this or the interception did lead to points, is after that interception, Miami got tacked on that field goal, and
right,
then the Mac Jones fumble led to a touchdown. So they scored 10 points off turnovers in that first half. And they trusted the analytics or whatever, went from 4th and 7. And instead of it being 10-3 heading into the half, it's 17-0. So just terrible second quarter when you were playing halfway decent. And if you go into the half with a 10-0 or 10-3, it's way different than 17-0. Absolutely.
right,
So rough first half for the Patriots. Their 5 possessions in the first half ended with an interception, a punt, a fumble, a punt, and just going into the half as Mac Jones took a knee to end the first half. But again, I just think that that's a little misleading. And Hunter Henry talked about this after the game too, where they felt like the offense really wasn't terrible today, and I think people are really overreacting. I mean, the turnovers were killer, of course. When you turn the ball over, it's going to look bad, but taking away the turnovers, we were able to move the ball a little bit. It wasn't amazing, but the offense wasn't as bad as everyone in the media and all the people in the Patriots community made it out to be. We just
right.
didn't end up getting points in the end of the day. So that was all in the first half. At the beginning of the second half, the Patriots started to show some life. They
Yeah.
got Miami to punt to begin the half. Kyle Duggar stuffed Tyreek on a 3rd-and-1 play to give us the ball back. And on our opening drive of the second half, Mac connected with Jacoby Myers on a 3rd-and-5 conversion. That was a huge play. Jacoby Myers had an okay game. Let me pull up his stats here quickly. Yeah, 4 catches for 55 yards. He was our standout receiver today. And that was to be expected because Miami is without Byron Jones, who would have been covering Jacoby. So they had to go to Nick Needham. And whenever the Patriots are facing an injured secondary, they're going to go after the inexperienced guy. That's just Bill Belichick 101. He's just going to pick up the inexperienced guy. That's what happened here with Myers and Needham. So
Mhm.
Myers got the conversion on 3rd-and-5 here. And we went for it on 4th down here, down 17-0. Not yet in field goal range. You had to make something happen. So we went for it on 4th-and-1. And I didn't really like this play call at all. This is the play where Mac Jones threw it deep to Devontae Parker in the middle of the end zone, and it fell incomplete. But luckily, the Patriots were bailed out by the refs this time as Xavier Howard was called for illegal contact on the play. So it was an automatic first down, and the drive continued for the Pats. Johnny Smith had a big play. It was like a short pass or a screen play where he caught it and ran for 20 yards after the catch. Which, how do you feel about how Johnny Smith played today? I mean, not flashy numbers, 3 catches, 33 yards, but
Mhm.
I didn't hate the way we utilized him today. I think that the way we used him today was indicative of how he's going to be successful in this offense, where we just get the ball to him quickly, and we hope he uses his athleticism and speed as a undersized tight end to get more yards. But how did you think about how Johnny played today?
Yeah, I definitely agree. It wasn't, a spectacular performance. The 33, 3 receptions, 11, average of 11 yards per carry. That's decent. That's over a first down for each reception, so that's obviously helpful. And he was looking at the stats in like the top 3 for receiving yards. Which yeah, and he actually had he had more receptions than a decent amount of the other guys in that receiving core, including Kendrick Bourne, who just had that one reception for 41, which was a great pass. But yeah, I agree. I think Jonnu Smith can really use the some of the momentum, and I think if he's used in the way he was used today, good things definitely will happen in terms of him in the future. And I do think, as a positive, I know he's spoken about it, the team has spoken about it. I do think this year will be a lot better for him. I don't know exactly how. I can't like put a finger on how many like touchdowns he'll have, yards in general, like will he have 500 plus? I'm not really sure. I do think Hunter Henry will realistically have a little bit better of a year because in terms of being that two tight end tandem, because him and Mac had a really good kind of duo where they really worked well together second half last year. But I think Jonnu Smith definitely will work with this team, and I think I do like how he was used. I wish he was used a little bit more, but I can see him being a threat, and I can also see him being used in that kind of blocking position potentially, like Gronk they really used in his later years, and things like that. I think if he can really develop into something here, we'll just have to see, honestly. But I think I did like what I saw from him today. And even though it wasn't incredibly remarkable, there was not a lot of moments last year where really anything was done. So I think, for him to at least be a name and do something, even in a loss, I think that was telling, and I think we'll have to see. But I personally hope he has a good year. I think he's a really talented player when he really gets down to it and works in the system and worked pretty well in that Titans offensive system. So yeah, we'll just have to see. Honestly, I'm interested to see what they do with him moving forward, and if it's more of what we saw today, or if it's different uses. So
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing for the Pats this year is just exposing and utilizing the athleticism of people like Jonnu Smith and Ty Montgomery. Ty Montgomery's a guy who we brought in this offseason who can play running back, wide receiver. He's
right,
very shifty. Jonnu Smith's, as I said, is an undersized tight end, but he's a faster tight end, and he's just very versatile. Kind of
right,
reminds me of what we used to do with Martellus Bennett, where like he would be in
right,
the backfield taking carries and like I'm not saying we put Jonnu Smith at running back, but it's just like we can give him the ball and he can do the rest. And we saw that today. And he had that big play that I talked about where he just caught the ball and went for 20 yards. It set the Pats up in the third quarter with goal to go. And on third and goal on this drive, Mac Jones was able to find Ty Montgomery wide open on his right side. And Ty Montgomery fell while he caught it, but he rolled into the end zone for a touchdown. So just like that, that was the first touchdown of the year for the Patriots. And they got right back into it at this point. It was 17-7 Dolphins after they scored a touchdown. So Patriots have life at this point. And this, I think we can agree, was the best drive of the day.
yeah, for sure.
So 17-7, Dolphins get the ball back, and the Patriots hold them to 3. So heading into the third quarter, heading into the fourth quarter, it is 27 Dolphins. A much better third quarter for New England, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
So we head to the fourth quarter, and the Patriots really, time was running out at this point, could not get anything going. Both sides were just punting back and forth to each other. Both offenses were showing their kryptonites, if you will, because also Miami has a new offensive scheme under a new head coach. And obviously the big news, as we both talked about beginning of this episode, was New England has a new offense this season as well. So in this fourth quarter, both of these offenses were showing their age or their youth, if you will. So it's pretty late at this point. Patriots are running out of chances, and it's 4th and 3. Mac Jones tries to find Hunter Henry down the field, but it's incomplete, and it's a turnover on downs. Dolphins do nothing with the ball after they get it back, and now time is really running out, and this is best play of the day for the Pats, which you mentioned earlier. 41-yard shot from Mac to Kendrick Bourne, who got into the game, and he caught it. This happened with around 5 minutes to go. But nothing would come of it, as a few plays later, Nelson Aguilar would catch the ball and fumble it. Miami would recover, and that would be your ball game, as Miami would run the clock out from that point. So Final score of the game today was 20-7 Miami. Miami moves to 1-0 on the season, and New England struggles mightily, as they always do. It seems like every year down in Miami, and they fall to 0-1 at the end of the year as they lose the season opener for the second straight season. So it's quite the frustrating game in the sense that you can't get anything going on offense, and you felt like the defense did enough to keep you in this game, but we have a lot of work to do with the offense, which is just weird because if the last decade or so have taught you anything about the Patriots, the offense has always been our strong suit, and it feels like the defense has always been something that needs to be worked on. But it's the other way around. But I'm honestly not too upset. Like, I'm not angry with the way we played today. I don't think we played terrible. It's the first game of the year. There's still 16 games to go. But I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a lot of work to do. There is a lot of work to do. We have a lot to get through. This is far from a good game. And this wasn't even a perfect game from the Dolphins as well, but they did just enough to win. And I'll give them their flowers too, where the Dolphins played this bad, or I shouldn't say this bad, but the Dolphins didn't even play that great, and they still won by double digits. So who knows what that can mean? I know people think the Dolphins will surprise some people. We're obviously going to be competing with them for second in the division, so we'll have to see. But nonetheless, a frustrating game offensively, and we'll just get into really the aftermath of stuff right now too while we have a little bit of time. What do you think about this whole Kendrick Bourne situation? Because I thought that him being in the doghouse was only going to be a preseason thing. I thought he was going to get more opportunities, honestly, in this game. I thought, looking back, that we should have thrown him in to begin the second half to need a spark because we had done nothing that first half, so why not throw him in? But something's going on because he only had that one big play that you talked about with the 41-yard pass. What do you make of this Kendrick Bourne situation? Is this something serious, or is this just strictly game planning?
I think it's a little bit of a concern, to be completely honest. I'm hoping it's a game plan thing, but I've been seeing a lot of reports, and I even pulled up just like his stats and recent tweets and things as we've been discussing him. I guess there's a lot of like self-doubt in a way that's kind of falling onto his shoulders as he seems very confused by this too. Which, like you said, I wasn't either really expecting this to be an issue coming into the regular season, especially considering he had 800 yards last year. He was actually a really solid receiver and worked really well with Mac Jones and had a handful of touchdowns that were really, a few of them actually being in really key moments against some solid teams. I really liked that Kendrick Bourne Mac Jones connection. I'd say almost as much as the Jacoby Myers connection that Mac had. And I understand bringing in Parker and still having Aguilar and Montgomery, and there's more of a wider field of receivers, but I feel like Kendrick Bourne should be a more integral part of this team given his success last season. And I feel like could be a problem with changing even Mac's potential game plan moving forward, because Mac was relatively reliant. I'd say Bourne, Myers, and Hunter Henry were really his three go-tos. And if you take one of those away, that could also hinder Mac's game. And I think even this one play was really telling because he was able to connect for that really great deep pass, and you could tell that genuine connection on both ends, and there was an excitement behind it. And that I remember, when that drive initially happened, or on that drive when that play happened, I was definitely really kind of more on the edge of my seat, like, okay, that was really good. I don't know if the game almost felt a little bit iced for the Dolphins at that point, but that play brought life. So yeah, I think there is actually some cause for concern for this. I really do hope it's just the beginning of the season. We're trying new things and whatnot, but I really hope he does get a fair shake this year, because I think last season was solid, and that connection with Mac Jones is something that I've even seen videos on social media of them like hanging out together outside. Like, they're actually really good friends and friendly with one another. And I feel like you take that away, that could really be a hindrance to Mac. So yeah, that's going to be something interesting to watch. And I actually really wish well for Bourne and hope he gets more time, because I think he earned it after last year, in my opinion. So,
and this is a message to Bill Belichick, and this goes off what you just pretty much said.
Right.
If you're going to bench a guy who got 700 yards for you in this offense and 5 touchdowns and caught around 60 passes last year, it better be worth it. And I don't know what's going on. Like, I don't know if this is just stemming from, Bourne in the preseason, because Bourne didn't have the best showing in the preseason, both personal, like on the field and off the field. He had a instance early in training camp where he wore the wrong pads out to a practice, and the ref at practice sent him back saying you need new pads on. Belichick, rightfully so, chewed him on that. I mean, that's just kind of a inexcusable mistake. And then, of course, he got in those fights with the Panthers at practice, and he got thrown out of practice. So
Right.
Belichick says it isn't anything related to discipline. Obviously, he's going to say that. I don't know if that's really the truth. I want to think it's just game planning, but it better be worth it if you're setting a guy, again, who was amazing for you last year and had a breakout year. And, it's easy to not question these things when you win as much as you have with the Patriots back in the Brady Belichick era.
Yeah.
Like, we questioned it when we lost the Super Bowl and Malcolm Butler was benched, but the very next year we went on to win the Super Bowl. So all was forgiven and all was forgotten, essentially. But when you haven't won a playoff game and coming up on 4 years, and you had a losing season and a rough end of the season last year, yeah, there's going to be calls for people to be held more accountable. And I don't really understand why Bourne wasn't more of a factor today. And I don't know if you caught his press conference after the game today, but he just sounds so hurt. And he was, trying to stay positive and say, like, once my opportunity is here, like, I'm going to take advantage of it. But he just sounded so hurt. He looked so dejected. And that's not what you want for the Patriots, because Kendrick Bourne, whether it be on the field and interviews last year or on his YouTube channel, one of the most positive guys I've ever seen.
Yeah.
He is a positive clubhouse presence. And if you're destroying him, what's that going to do to the rest of the clubhouse or the locker room?
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah. I've even interacted, I think, on social media with him. I don't know if that was him. It might have been. I almost remember. I know he makes music as well. I think I think he was doing like an IG live when he got initially signed, and I was just like, me and a lot of people were in the chat, and he was like very like friendly with fans too. So I totally agree. He's a really solid guy, and to go off that too, I think one of the most like disheartening sound bites that come out of that was him saying he was disappointed in himself. I think, like you said, that's just really hard to see, and it definitely, I think that the Malcolm Butler comparison is really a great comparison, and although not a good comparison, because that incident to this day is still very controversial and very shocking to a lot of top Patriots brass and just the fan base in general. So yeah. And even too, just looking at Bourne's stats last year, like he really did. He had a career year across the board. Longest reception 75, 5 touchdowns, over 100 rushing yards, 800 and under 60 receptions, but 800 yards. I mean, that's good stuff. I'd say that's number 2, number 3 receiver type numbers. So yeah, we'll just have to see where this goes. I hope this doesn't take a toll on his mental health or physical health either. So we'll just have to see. And I hope Bill is more forgiving and talks it out, because I know even the two of them, I saw some positive moments between them last year too on social media and good interaction. So I hope that positive vibe and Bill kind of that brings that energy again and like has a sit down or something with Bourne where they really talk through things, because he should definitely be out there every game for a majority of the offensive snaps and given a fair shake. So
I just think something deeper is going on too, because I'm reading on Twitter right now where when that the Aguilar fumble happened at the end of the game, Kendrick Bourne was still supposed to be on the field for that play, or he thought he was going to be on the field, but they told him, no, you're off. Right. So the fumble happens. Apparently, Kendrick Bourne was on the sideline repeatedly holding up an index finger. And what this means is I had one target all game. Then he went over to the cooler and hit something, and Jonnu Smith had to cool him down, pun intended. But this just makes me think like something deep's going on, and Bourne clearly doesn't agree with it. But like, if you can't even keep the guys in check like you have in years past, it's if your players aren't on board with what you're doing, it's going to be tough to win them over if this is a recurring problem. So this is just going to be an interesting storyline to see how long this plays out. I don't know why this is happening. I don't really think anyone knows why this is happening, but it just kind of reminds me of the whole Malcolm Butler thing in a
Yeah.
sense where Butler was supposedly benched because of game planning. And I hope that this is just what it is for Bourne. And
Yeah.
hopefully it can be used a lot more next week against Pittsburgh, but we'll have to see. And then the other thing is on Twitter, Phil A. Perry talked about a moment he saw where Joe Judge was on the sideline chatting with Mac Jones for a minute. Well, Mac Jones catched his breath on the bench. There was no tablet involved. Then Judge and Matt Patricia went over some things while Jones was standing right by them, but alone. Then Jones went to warm up, and then before the Dolphins punted, he chatted briefly with Matt Patricia. So, what the heck is going on with this offense, too? I mean, we all know it's going to be a work in progress. I don't think that this thing will be smooth sailing until like October, November, honestly, with the offense. But like, the whole story, and it's continuing and fizzling into this regular season, is that the offense is struggling. So many people, even the coaches, don't even know what's going on. I mean, that's just that was a hard read for sure. So my final ish question relating to all these points I brought up to you is: do you think that Patriots fans are valid in hitting the panic button after just 60 minutes of football in this NFL season?
I don't want to say that the panic button should necessarily be hit after just one game, but I definitely think there's a lot of things to really be concerned about and a lot of criticisms to just like gauge against the Pats personnel. I don't even entirely blame a lot of the players for a lot of the things because it's really a lot of it is game plan based. And like we pointed out with the Kendrick Bourne weird situation with Mac Jones, not having the media availability after the game with an apparent back injury, which could, stem into something else considering he did need x-rays. So I'm interested where that goes. That could be potentially concerning to have your QB1 be down after week one or maybe out for a few weeks, especially when they have tough competition. The Steelers are hungry, the Ravens are hungry, and then you have a few other, younger teams that also could be a threat kind of in that Patriots stage where they're getting ready to, with a new quarterback, new faces. So I don't think it's entirely, I don't think it's time to really, declare the season dead or anything like that, seeing as it's just 1 week. But I definitely think there's a lot to be concerned about. And I think if a lot of these same issues persist and we see them in weeks 2 and 3 in particular, week 3 is obviously the home opener against the Ravens. But yeah, they have a couple pretty tough matchups the next couple weeks against some teams that are kind of riding high off wins. The Steelers obviously having a pretty thrilling and difficult win over the Bengals. So it's going to be really, really interesting. I wouldn't say, the season's dead, panic, or anything like that quite yet, but definitely there's a lot of concerns. And if those continue the next couple weeks, I think by week 4, if they're 0-3 and these issues are still here, Mac Jones is not himself. Yeah, the season might at that point kind of be slipping away. So this is food for thought, really, for upcoming weeks.
Definitely. I think it's a little premature to completely hit the panic button after just 60 minutes of football. Still got to figure it out. I think you'll get a better answer by the end of September and a definitive answer on how the season will go by the end of October. Honestly, that's just how Patriots teams roll, is that we're figuring things out for the first half of the year, and then we either put it in the high gear in the second half of the year or we just fall apart and collapse. So I think it's just more of the same there. But there are definitely some real issues to take from this game based off what I talked about and what I just mentioned, where if people in the offense and like the offensive coordinators or the de facto offensive coordinators and Joe Judge and Matt Patricia don't know what's going on, then we could be in for a long season with the offense. Could be keyword. But still plenty of time to figure it out. About a week of practice. You hope Mac Jones is going to be fine. He seems like the guy who's just going to power through it. It might be a bigger injury than we think, but obviously with him dealing with an injury after just the first game, it's not good. And he got rocked on that hit where he suffered the injury. That was really bad. So we'll see what happens. X-rays were negative, but Patriots will get right back at it with a game against the Pittsburgh Steelers next Sunday at 1 p.m. at Heinz Field. Pittsburgh beat Cincinnati in an upset today, 23-20, with a walk-off field goal. Mitch Trubisky was 21 for 38 with 194 yards and 1 touchdown in his Steelers debut, replacing Ben Roethlisberger. The leading receiver the best receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers today was Pat Freiermuth at tight end.
Yeah.
5 catches for 75 yards. Chase Claypool was their leading rusher somehow with 6 carries for 36 yards. Joe Burrow struggled in this game.
Yeah.
33 for 53, 338 yards, 2 touchdowns and 4 picks. 3 of those picks coming in the first half. But Jamar Chase picked right up where he left off last year with 10 catches for 129 yards and a touchdown. But definitely a shocker with the defending AFC champs losing today at home to Pittsburgh. So we're going to do
just to add just really quickly off that, the T. Higgins concussion as well. That could be a potential issue. But yeah, no, that game was very thrilling. And the fumble and 4 interceptions for Joe Burrow was very, very unexpected. But I like that him and Jamar Chase, that continued connection, that Louisiana connection. I think that could be, again, lethal this year. But yeah, also that T. Higgins concussion was definitely concerning because he's an exceptional receiver. So, but great game. I definitely enjoyed that game.
And I'm looking like Evan McPherson, the kicker for the Bengals, missed a field goal, and he was ever so accurate last year as a rookie. That's kind of surprising, but he hit a 59-yarder, so props to him. But yeah, an interesting first week of football. Obviously, we got the Bucs-Cowboys game starting a little bit, but Pats Steelers next week. I'm going to do a whole video later this week on previewing that game, but just quickly give me your thoughts on how that game will go, and anything else related to that.
So, in the words of the Name Redacted podcast, shout out them. I'll do my Stop and Shop look ahead. This isn't the Sox, but I think
no, we are not sponsored by Stop and Shop yet, but continue.
No, we will be someday though. But yeah, I think a big thing for this next upcoming game with the Steelers, I think there's really going to be 3 factors. I think one is just the kind of that riding high effect where the Steelers had such a prolonged win. I mean, that game overtime dragged on, the missed field goals, the missed extra points, Joe Burrow's struggles with Trubisky and at times, although he was pretty decent in his Steelers debut. I think there was a lot of pressure on them. I mean, the Bengals are obviously a lethal threat, and I think the Steelers did handle it as well as they could. There definitely was some really sloppy moments that I observed that I think might be concerning later in the season. But I think that's a huge factor. For one is that them being in a good spot after that thrilling win. I think 2, it's their home opener of the year, and they're hosting a rival team, and I think and I think 3 will just be that receiving core and guys that can rush. I think Najee Harris, Pat Fry, Chase Claypool. I think if those young talents and Trubisky's still young as well. I think if Trubisky really puts his all in, I think he can really get things clicking with a lot of this team. And this is a young team. I do know TJ Watt suffered a strain, which I think could be a potential plus for the Patriots on the offensive end. He won't be as much of an intimidating threat, on the offense, kind of tearing guys down. So having no Watt next week would be a benefit. But I think the Steelers team is definitely going to be a pretty tough game on the road. I'm if I were to give a score prediction, I think the Patriots will definitely try their best offensively, and I actually am thinking it's going to be a little bit of a closer game, just given how this past game was. I guess if I were to give a prediction right now, I'd say 24-21 Steelers. But I could see the Patriots potentially just putting their heads down, coming out and winning. But I don't see either team scoring more than like 24-ish points. It's going to be a pretty back and forth game, and I'm thinking potentially low scoring. So
so it's going to be interesting with it looks like Pittsburgh Steelers fear that TJ Watt suffered a torn pectoral, as you hinted at. I'm just reading that on ESPN, so that would mean he'd be out for this game. Najee Harris also injured his foot again, and he left the game in a walking boot. So those injuries are going to be crucial in determining whether if they play or not. That's going to absolutely factor into who wins this game. We're going to have our hands full with other targets. Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, Pat Fryermuth, Pickens. Patriots are going to have their hands full again because the Steelers have always notoriously had a very good offense the last 5 to 10 years. And that's much of the same here. They have people on defense as well. Like I've always liked the Miles Jack, Minka Fitzpatrick in the secondary. Those names stand out. Devin Bush. This could be another tricky game, but it's an absolutely must-win game for the Pats because if you go 0-2 heading into 2 straight games against Baltimore and then Green Bay, then you're looking at potentially starting the season in a very, very rough spot that might be too deep to dig out of just four weeks into the season. So Patriots have to win this game. But this is a big game for both me and you, Ricky, because Pat Fry, it's a big game for us as he's from around where we're also from, I'll say. I'm sure it'll be a cool game for him. I'm sure he's looking to score against, I assume his favorite hometown team, but it should be a fun game. I think I'm just going to homer it again. I'm always going to homer it. I think the Patriots will bounce back and win. I think we can win like 24-21. That's what I'll say.
Yeah.
But, I still don't think we're anywhere close to seeing a complete game being played by New England. But I think next week, hopefully, we can do just enough to win. I think the defense is in a good spot. The offense is going to be able, just to correct last week's mistakes and do better against Pittsburgh next Sunday. And hopefully we just go to 1-1 heading into the home opener in week 3 against Baltimore. But that is going to do it for this recap. Thank you, Ricky, for joining me again on such short notice. Tough day for the Patriots, but it's one game. There's still 16 more to go. I will talk to you guys later this week with Chris. We're going to do a preview probably sometime Friday, Saturday night for this upcoming Pittsburgh game. And then we'll be back at it with coverage again after the Steelers game next Sunday. And we're just going to keep it going. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Have a good night. Take care.
Watch out for Minka Fitzpatrick next week, too. Oh, my God. That's going to be crazy. All right.
Definitely. This will be a good game. All right, everyone. Have a good night. Go Pats.